Hey there, wake up. It's Means Morning News. Just after 11 a.m. on the East Coast, I'm Sam Sachs. It's the Friday show, a Friday the 13th show, in fact. So today's stories are extra spooky. It's just the way the world is right now. And we begin in Iran, which was targeted by a barrage of airstrikes overnight by the Israeli military in a major escalation and provocation of war. The bombings, which included targets such as high-rise apartment buildings in Tehran, killed top Iranian military and government officials and also assassinated civilian nuclear scientists. A number of Iranian military sites and nuclear facilities were targeted. According to the IDF, over 300 bombs were dropped across more than 100 sites in Iran. Here was Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announcing the operations shortly after his war government survived a vote to dissolve parliament.
Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat.
So this wasn't just a one-night thing. This bombing campaign will be sustained for days, at least. The Israeli population has been ordered to lock down for weeks in preparation for an Iranian response. Shortly after last night's attacks on Tehran, Secretary of State Marco Rubio tried to distance the U.S. from the operations. The White House released a statement from Rubio that read, quote, "Tonight, Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We are not involved in strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region. Israel advised us that they believe this action was necessary for its self-defense. President Trump and the administration have taken all necessary steps to protect our forces and remain in close contact with our regional partners. Let me be clear, Iran should not target U.S. interests or personnel." So the U.S. was made aware of Israel's decision to launch the attacks on Iran. And despite Israel being a military client state of the U.S., and despite the White House actively involved in negotiations with Iran, with another round of those talks just days away, President Trump allowed Netanyahu to go through with the operation, which threatens to drag the U.S. into another war. According to the Times of Israel, the bombings were coordinated with the U.S. Some of the attacks came from Iraqi airspace, which is essentially controlled by the U.S. And days before the bombs fell on Tehran, President Trump was already preparing for retaliation by ordering non-essential embassy staff across the Middle East to return home. And it's highly likely the U.S. will be involved in defending Israel from any Iranian retaliation. And should Iran's response involve hitting U.S. military sites in the region, then that will lead to direct war between Washington and Tehran, which would be catastrophic. But something a lot of members of Congress are yearning for. A number of neocon U.S. senators came out in support of Israel. Tom Cotton posted, quote, "Proud to stand with Israel." Lindsey Graham said, quote, "Game on, pray for Israel." This is from Ted Cruz calling explicitly for the U.S. to join the war on Iran. Quote, "President Trump has been clear that Iran must completely dismantle their nuclear capacity. Iran has given President Trump the middle finger. Israel is acting to defend themselves, and we should stand with them." But probably the most hawkish statement came from a Democrat, Israel's biggest stooge in the Senate, John Fetterman, who tweeted, quote, "Our commitment to Israel must be absolute, and I fully support this attack. Keep wiping out Iranian leadership and the nuclear personnel. We must provide whatever is necessary, military, intelligence, weaponry, to fully back Israel in striking Iran." Well, sir, what's necessary right now is for you to be dropped into Tehran with an M16. You're prepared to do that, right? Right? Or is this just a war you expect your poor constituents to fight? This is, of course, the consequences of the U.S. not just allowing, but aiding Israel to carry out a genocide in Gaza for more than 20 months now. U.S. protections have emboldened Netanyahu's rogue war government to act with impunity as it bombs not just Gaza, but also Lebanon, Syria, and now Iran. All right, turning now to Los Angeles and several cities across the U.S. where the population is rising up against President Trump's mass deportation program. The White House's deployment of the National Guard to police the streets of L.A., squash protests, and assist in immigration raids over the objection of California's state government was deemed illegal by a federal judge in California on Thursday. The president claimed that the protests in LA against ICE raids was an act of rebellion against the federal government that necessitated calling up the National Guard. Trump also deployed hundreds of active duty Marines to the city. But Judge Charles Breyer rejected the argument. He wrote, quote, "The protests in Los Angeles fall short of rebellion." He added, quote, "Moreover, the court is troubled by the implication inherent in defendant's argument that protest against the federal government, a core civil liberty protected by the First Amendment, can justify a finding of rebellion." The judge's order returned control of California's National Guard back to Governor Gavin Newsom, although that order was later put on hold by another court pending an appeal from the Trump administration. The president has threatened to send troops into other cities where anti-ICE protests have erupted, and it's not clear if he or the military's command structure will comply with a court order not to. During a House Armed Services Committee hearing on Thursday, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth was asked if he would follow a judge's order on this issue. Here's that exchange with Congressman Ro Khanna.
Let me ask you this, two simple questions. You got 30 seconds. I'm not trying to trick you. I think it would assure the American people. Because it shouldn't be Ro Khanna's view of the Constitution, and it shouldn't be Secretary Hegseth's. It should be the Supreme Court and the federal courts. Can you assure the American people on two things? You will respect any Supreme Court decision on this matter about whether the Marines are constitutional, and you will respect the district courts when they rule before the Supreme Court rules.
What I can say is we should not have local judges determining foreign policy or national security policy for the country.
So you're not willing to say you would respect those decisions?
What I'm saying is local district judges shouldn't make foreign policy for the United States.
Foreign policy? What? We're talking about California. How is an order to send troops to California an example of a foreign policy decision? Someone check on the defense secretary and make sure he's not drunk again. After the troop deployment, the Pentagon spokesperson, Sean Parnell, referenced numbers showing that more U.S. troops are now in Los Angeles than in Iraq or Syria. Parnell posted, quote, "This is exactly what the American people voted for: defense of our people and our homeland." Not exactly. The people voted to end wars, not to bring wars home. Also, Parnell's point is further weakened by the increasing prospects of war with Iran now. Meanwhile, the Department of Homeland Security, which is overseeing the mass deportation raids, is once again resorting to thuggish attacks against political opponents. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem was conducting a press conference about ICE operations in California when the state's Senator Alex Padilla attempted to ask her a question. But he was immediately swarmed by federal agents, shoved out of the room, thrown to the ground, and handcuffed. A number of Trump allies have attempted to justify the treatment of the senator by accusing Padilla of, quote, lunging at the secretary. DHS spokesperson and notorious liar Tricia McLaughlin claimed, quote, Senator Padilla chose disrespectful political theater and interrupted a live press conference without identifying himself or having his Senate security pin on as he lunged towards Secretary Noem. McLaughlin is the same person who accused Congresswoman LaMonica McIver of, quote, body slamming ICE agents, despite video of that incident also plainly disproving her claim. Although McIver has since been charged with assaulting law enforcement officers, charges brought by Trump's former personal attorney, Alina Habba, who is now a prosecutor in New Jersey. Democratic lawmakers spoke out against the treatment of one of their colleagues, some more effectively than others. Here was New Mexico Senator Ben Ray Lujan.
This is ridiculous. I'd use some other language, but I'd probably get tossed off the floor right now. Growing up on a small farm and cleaning a barn, my dad taught me how to take a shovel to all the stuff that came out of the animals. You know what that's called. I know what it's called. And some of the animals that did that were males. They were bulls. And the stuff that came out of them has a few names to it. I'll call it manure today.
I don't even remember what we were talking about. This is our opposition party. Doesn't inspire confidence. One last bit of troubling news coming out of the upper chamber, where Republican Senator Josh Hawley is using the protests in Los Angeles to investigate domestic political organizations like the Party for Socialism and Liberation. In a letter sent to the group's San Francisco chapter, Hawley demanded PSL preserve all internal communications, financial documents, travel records, and donor lists. He also threatened the group with criminal prosecution if it doesn't comply. And Hawley sent a similar letter to a left-wing local nonprofit that aids immigrants called the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights. So Republicans are exploiting dissent against the president's mass deportations in order to justify a military and law enforcement crackdown against political enemies. Grim. And finally, we've got a good news, bad news situation with the universe. First, the good news. Turns out our Milky Way galaxy may not collide with the nearby Andromeda galaxy after all. Astronomers previously believed there was a high likelihood the two systems would slam into each other sometime in the next 5 to 10 billion years. A near certainty of it, in fact. But new research now suggests there's only about a 50% chance of that happening, meaning a galactic coming together might not even happen at all. That would be a relief to whatever is still living on the planet 5 billion years from now. Scientists weren't entirely sure what a collision between the Milky Way and Andromeda would mean for our solar system. There were doomsday scenarios where the Earth might get sucked into a black hole at the center of the galaxy, or where the sun might get flung off out of the solar system, condemning Earth to an icy demise. Or there's a chance that nothing at all would happen, given just how vast the universe is and how far things are away from each other still. So that's the good news. The bad news is that even if a galactic collision is off the table, there's still an unavoidable endgame. A separate study released last month found that the universe is ending much faster than scientists previously believed. Researchers at Radboud University in the Netherlands estimated when the universe will essentially go inactive, when every planet, star, and black hole will have collapsed, when energy will cease to exist. It was previously calculated that that will happen in 10 to the power of 1100 years. Not sure we have a name for that number, but if it were to be written out, it would be a 1 followed by 1100 zeros. That's a long time away. But the new research points to a faster demise, 10 to the power of 78 years, which is a 1 followed by 78 zeros, Still an incomprehensibly high number, but much smaller than the prior calculation. Just some useful information for people who like to plan ahead, I guess. I returned early from vacation to attend to the most important business we do around here. You know what it is. This week's Rich Dick is David Plouffe. Plouffe was the mastermind of Barack Obama's 2008 presidential campaign and went on to be a longtime White House advisor. He then parlayed that early political success into assisting scummy mega corporations. He's got a new gig this week. The world's largest Bitcoin dealer just announced Plouffe is joining its global advisory council. Crypto trading platform Coinbase said in a statement that Plouffe, quote, brings a unique perspective that will help Coinbase advance crypto innovation and advocate for the future of finance. That unique perspective is that of a liberal whisperer. They absolutely love this guy because of his association with Obama. It's through Plouffe that Coinbase hopes it can get new types of people buying into crypto hype and, crucially, have more tentacles into the politics and policy world. According to an interview Plouffe gave to Politico about his move, he's going to, quote, bring his skills as a storyteller to an industry whose regulatory struggles have turned into a fight for credibility and stability. He told the outlet, quote, a lot of the debate is, are you pro-crypto or anti-crypto? Pro-ride sharing or not? Pro-home sharing or not? And I think this next stage is really deepening the benefits, whether that's the unbanked, whether that's security, whether that's opening up new forms of commerce. Honestly, I've read that quote multiple times and I don't know what the hell he's talking about there. But I'm not surprised to see Plouffe try to blur the moral lines here. People are anti-crypto because they don't think it's good to see the economy more intertwined with speculative assets prone to scamming, that in many cases are designed to enrich the already wealthy at the expense of the working class investors who are lured into the scheme. And people are anti-rideshare for good reason too. It's an industry based on extreme exploitation of its workers. It undermines mass public transportation and puts more cars on the road. And despite its moniker, ride-sharing, studies have shown the industry actually increases transportation-based carbon emissions. Plouffe, by the way, brought up the ride-sharing stuff because after he left the Obama White House, he went on to work for Uber. And after that, he went on to work for a so-called philanthro-capitalist venture started by the Zuckerbergs, the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. Plouffe also worked for Coinbase rival Binance before leaving that firm to become a top advisor to the spectacular failure that was the Kamala Harris presidential campaign of 2024. Plouffe now joins Coinbase just as the industry is on the verge of securing a major victory in Washington. The Senate on Thursday advanced a crypto-friendly regulation bill known as the Genius Act. It has enough Democratic support to overcome a filibuster and is likely to be approved sometime next week. In addition to the weak rules on crypto, the bill notably doesn't prohibit elected officials all the way up to the president from trading in crypto. President Trump has used the White House to make him and his family a fortune on cryptocurrencies, holding billions of dollars on paper and collecting hundreds of millions of dollars in fees from investors buying into the Trump meme coin. Coinbase's advisory council includes a number of other political creatures who went through the revolving door, linking public service to capitalist enterprise. You probably recognize a few of the names who took the bag to bolster the scam industry. Trump's previous defense secretary, Mark Esper, is among them. Also, former Democratic Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy, former Democratic Congressman Tim Ryan, and former Republican Senator Patrick Toomey. And, of course, how could I forget? Kyrsten Sinema also found a role at Coinbase after her disgraceful career in Congress. The crypto company is assembling a council full of rich dicks. And this week, David Plouffe takes his seat among them. All right, friends, the show ends today with a sunrise from Delaware. It was sent from Rehoboth Beach. Enjoy. Thanks for the sunrise. That's the show. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the team behind the scenes. Find more MMN at means.tv. We also have a YouTube and podcast channel, and you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. One day capitalism will fall. Until then, we'll be right here. See you next week.